So, I stumbled across a video about a month or two ago on TikTok asking who was the strongest out of these four characters. The options were Yoriichi, Gojo, the Chainsaw Devil, and Benimaru. It got me thinking a little, and I came to the conclusion that it's Benimaru, and it really wasn't close, like, at all. Shinmon Benimaru is the strongest, plain and simple. But why is that? Shinmon Benimaru is the captain of Fire Force Company 7 and goes by many names. Waka, Destruction King, even the destroyer of Asakusa. But one name sticks out above the rest, the strongest fire soldier. Now, what does it mean to actually be the strongest? Of course, you can take it at face value and say that someone who can beat anyone is the strongest. But being the strongest and being the representation of what it means to be the strongest are two separate things, and I believe that Benimaru takes both of those. So, I'm going to be giving my take on why I believe this, so make sure you do like the video and subscribe, along with leaving your own opinion in the comments. Without further ado, let's get into it. At a young age, Benimaru was always getting into fights, being punished for it by his father Hibachi, telling him that he can't go around fighting people all the time. Benimaru didn't understand this since Hibachi was always getting into fights himself. After being punished for it one day, Benny is met by Conroe, who asks him who he's going to beat up next, and Benny responds by saying whoever pisses him off. Conroe then says, "Was it your fight, Benimaru?" We then have a flashback of how the fight happened, and learn that Benimaru forced his way into the fight. After being yelled at, Benimaru beats up the man who yelled at him. Benimaru is purposely intervening in other people's business to start fights and saying that he was messed with first. He knows that he has the power to stop these fights easily, and even goes as far as to say he was doing it for someone else's sake. Conroe then says that it won't be long before Benimaru surpasses him in power, following with this quote: "Those who have nothing will gain nothing. Those who are meant to gain will gain much." When you have power, fame, trust, and fear come with it. You can say you don't want it, but you can't get rid of it. Hibachi is just trying to get you to use your powers for good, to make yourself look good. Was it really your fight, Benny? To that, Benimaru has no answer. He knows it was never his fight to begin with, and that he purposely chose to enter it, knowing he could beat them both up if necessary. Conroe talks to Hibachi about how his teachings aren't clear enough and that Benimaru needs extra help. Hibachi doesn't really care, saying that it's Benny's problem if he doesn't get it. Even if he becomes a monster, Conroe asks. This is a callback to Black Star from Soul Eater and Shinra, but that's for another video. Conroe and Hibachi discuss what it means to be an Asakusa Hakeshi. You have to be a dad-blamed idiot. Hakeshi aren't like fire soldiers, taking lives under the grace of God. Hakeshi take lives on their own. The responsibility rests on their shoulders. They carry the lives they have taken, the death they will cause. It's something Benimaru has to come to understand, to bear the responsibility of death. A single man cannot be God, as there are no gods. The Hakeshi take all the responsibility for the living and the dead. Benimaru is destined to become the next god of Asakusa, the one who has to bear the deaths and the lives he will inevitably take, and nobody can take on those deaths but him. Soon after executing an Infernal, the son of the Infernal kills Hibachi. Benimaru claims that he is ready to take responsibility from his father despite what his father thinks. Asakusa is now Benimaru's town. Benimaru becomes Asakusa's new god. A god cannot get into every fight man creates, or in this case, his people. He must have faith in his people to solve their own problems, to fight their own battles. Just because you can win every fight doesn't mean you need to fight every fight. Those who have nothing will gain nothing. Those who are meant to gain will gain much. Benimaru later understood this, which is why when Joker asked him if he planned on staying out, he says it's the Empire's fight, not his, showing the belief he has in the people of the Tokyo Empire and that he does not need to intervene. He's allowing the Empire to solve its own problems, something a young Benimaru wouldn't do, until His old master is brought back as a doppelganger, and that's when he decides it's now his fight. A man of Asakusa only fights for Asakusa. Fear comes with power, Conroe said. This fear is what led to Hibachi's death. The boy says he merely did what Hibachi did, and that it isn't wrong, to which Hibachi agrees. He kills, and thus was going to be killed as a result. The boy doesn't understand why the grown-ups love him. What gives Hibachi the right to take people's lives? Hibachi doesn't know, but the Hakeshi can't be a sensible man. He has to be the biggest dad-blamed idiot under the sun. Hibachi died, being unable to find a balance. He had the power and even most of his people's trust, but there was still fear. This is what he wanted to teach Benny, to find balance. We return to the fight in which Benimaru explains the current situation of Asakusa and how it's now Company 7. He says he took up the torch from Conroe and that he's honored to act as the Hakeshi, requesting a favor to fight. He wants his father to see the man he's become and that he hasn't brought shame to the Shinmon name. Benimaru still doesn't believe he's become a good enough Hakeshi. He hasn't become strong enough. He still wishes to have the approval of his master before he can finally have clearance, even if it means taking his former master's life. The people of Asakusa cheer in the background. They are Benny's Hakeshi. Benimaru does not carry the weight of the dead by himself, unlike his father. He has faith in his people, and they have faith in him. His Nichiren is the combination of not only his own power, but the faith and belief his people have in him as their leader, their god. This is Benimaru's resolve, having not just the sun, but also the moon. Balance. What made Benimaru different from Hibachi is that he could find a balance as the Hakeshi. Benimaru wasn't some lonesome god carrying the weight of all the lost lives of Asakusa. He had the support of his people, unlike his father. The faith he had in his people, and vice versa, is what allowed him to become a better Hakeshi. After defeating his father, Hibachi finally gave Benny what he was needing most, his approval. Benimaru didn't need to shoulder all of the weight unlike his father. Being the strongest does not mean you have to bear everything yourself. As the cataclysm rages on, Benimaru comes to terms that he can't save everyone, but he doesn't plan to abandon them. He will go with them to the afterlife. He wiped out the fear in Asakusa. If it wasn't for Hibachi and Conroe, Benimaru would have turned into a flame-bearing monster. God will always have faith in us, and in order to find strength, we must have faith in God. With God being the sun and his people being the moon, we rely on one another. We gain strength from one another. Even someone being dealt the worst in life, being at the lowest of the low, does not mean they are destined to become a monster. They can become the very people who change the world, almost becoming a god themselves for others. People rely on their gods, and gods rely on their people. That is what makes Benimaru the strongest. Thank you for watching.